Deputy Stanley, whom I know will observe the time.
Thanks, Laska Hurlock. The question I have is in relation to the terms of the payment and availability scheme for approved housing bodies. I know it's one of the schemes that government introduced to try and increase housing supply, and I suppose there's little known about it at this stage, but it has been in operation now for some time, and I think it's useful for us to, for government and opposition and for the Dáil here to look at the scheme, to see how it's working and the terms of the scheme. So that's it.
Minister, 2 minutes. Minister English.
Approved housing bodies are making an important contribution to the supply of new social housing homes under Rebuilding Ireland. Since 2009, homes built, purchased or leased by the approved housing bodies are made available for social housing support under a payment and availability agreement with the local authority. For each property or group of properties, the P&A agreement sets out the details of the properties, details in respect of nomination rights of the local authority, the payment that will be made to the AHB, how that payment will be periodically reviewed, how the tenant's rent will be charged in accordance with the relevant differential rent scheme, and the conditions in relation to the maintenance of the properties and the provision of service to tenants. The agreement also sets out that payments may be withheld if the terms are not complied with by the approved housing body, or if necessary, the agreement can be terminated. P&As are generally between 10 and 30 years in length. The level of payment made by the local authority to the approved housing body varies depending on the type and source of the property, ranging from between 80% to 95% of market rent. 95% is in the case of apartments. It's generally 92 or lower for the other ones. At the end of 2018, a total of 6,034 social housing homes were secured from AHBs by local authorities using the P&A agreements. In 2018, a spend of 63.7 million was provided by my department to local authorities to meet the terms of these agreements with approved housing bodies, and they are in the space of delivering about a third of the targets for the remaining years of Rebuilding Ireland as well.
Deputy Stanley.
And you said in some detail there in relation to how it's working, that the subvention to the approved housing body from the local authority, and you might just explain whether that's a contra item or not. In other words, whether the local authority is reimbursed from that for that figure by the department, because it is a substantial chunk out of local authority budgets. But you've clarified that between 80 and 95% of the market rent is paid to the approved housing body. But on top of that, the approved housing body also receives the differential rent. In other words, what the rent is for a similar local authority house with a similar family in the same county, which can be anything up to 100, 130, 140 euros a week, on top of the 80 to 95%. So, I mean, it's a very attractive and very beneficial scheme for the approved housing bodies. If you could clarify whether that's a contra item or not. The other question is that I think you mentioned that there was 6,000 delivered over what period of time they were done. And I would just ask the question that, it's very beneficial, and the approved housing bodies are managing very well and have a very good budget for repairs and maintenance and management of their stock because of that. But why can't we offer the same deal to local authorities?
I get a sense, Deputy, you're a little bit unhappy with the approved housing bodies, but I want to say that we're very happy with the performance, and they're doing extremely well and delivering a lot of houses into our housing stock. The scheme is designed to stretch the balance sheet and stretch the taxpayers' money and to get good value for the executor, and we're getting that for a long number of years. And the average cost of a house through the P&A agreement is about €878. And you might want to consult there with your colleagues in relation to if he supports housing bodies or not, but we would support them, and they deliver good value for the taxpayer through the different combination schemes. There is the different combination, which is the CAF scheme, which is the acquired or build turnkey. There's a mortgage to rent scheme. There's the lease privately. There's the lease from the NARPS process, and the repair and lease back scheme. So there's different kind of combinations there. But when you combine them all together, the average P&A cost is 878. So it's quite good value there, and we are, I believe, getting a good use of our housing budget in the combination of approved housing bodies and local authorities. I do get a sense from yourself, you mightn't necessarily agree with that. Local authorities, and when we discuss with them, and certainly all the local authority members, understand the relationship now and have strengthened our relationship. And I would ask that councillors involve themselves a lot more with the business of approved housing bodies on a regular basis too, because the approved housing bodies work in partnership with local authorities and are responsible to local authorities.
Final question, Deputy Stanley.
Local authorities have very little say in any of this. except to pass a budget every year for the payment and availability scheme. That's the reality, Minister, and that's something that you have to recognise. In relation to the value for money, I mean, I understand that government will bring in a number of schemes to try and get to deliver the maximum number of houses. But the problem here is that it's the cost to the taxpayer. And he didn't clarify whether there's a contra item or not. In other words, whether the local authority is reimbursed by the department, but it's still public funds. And what I'm getting at here is that it's the use of public funds. Of course, you are happy with the delivery by the approved housing bodies, and the approved housing bodies are very happy because they have a good supply, they have a good cash flow here to deliver and to maintain and manage the housing stock. The problem is the local authorities don't have it, and the other thing they have to factor in here is that as rents continue to escalate because we don't have rent controls, and differential rents will go up as well over the next year or two, the flow of cash out of public funds on a payment and availability will increase. So what I'm asking you here is that can we not offer the same deal to local authorities, the very, very same deal of payment and availability, to allow local authorities to build the very same way as the approved housing bodies are, and to buy and to get those houses into use.
Minister to
and the state will wind up with houses.
Minister.
The problem is with this scheme, Minister,
Stanley.
is that the state will not own one brick in these houses after the 30 years.
Stanley, you've exceeded.
Again, Deputy, some misleading comments there. The local authorities are absolutely and every way involved in the delivery of housing through approved housing bodies, because not one approved housing body scheme can come through the system without the local authorities say so and without their involvement. So please, I'd rather you didn't mislead the House here or cause confusion with councils, because they're very much, as a housing body, you have to work through the local authorities. They sanction all that in combination with our department. Yes, they're reimbursed for the cost of that, absolutely. That's what the housing budget is there for. I will remind you, it's the highest housing budget we've ever seen. We're spending nearly 2.5 billion plus this year in housing, because we are committed to that as well. And the combination of work with the local authorities and housing bodies helps us deliver the houses that you keep saying you want us to deliver, which is 10,000 houses a year, which we do this year. And I would you should look at your own housing policy. You want to deliver less houses than we do, using taxpayers' money. So I think I'd question into that as well. The last bit I would say is that the housing bodies, they're not for profit, because you kind of sense there a little bit of frustration in your voice. They're not for profit. They're not making profit out of this. It's a good use of money. They do avail of private finance as well and housing finance agencies as well. So they have a combination of sources of funding that gives us a good result and helps increase the activity. And I would agree with you. They are in a very strong position to manage their properties, and they manage them well, and they've developed good skills there. Likewise, local authorities are well funded to do the same, and they also have a wise program to help turn properties.
Thanks, Minister.